the idea was to get rich and famous. You know, it was, we were in a group that was sort of disappearing into the oblivion. I mean, that was one side of it, but there was another side which was an evolution. But we loved the sound of 12-string guitars. Now, this was old days, so it meant there weren't electronic tuners. You know, 3 guys with 36 strings at their command would sit there twiddling knobs, and until they got the guitars in tune. So there were long pauses between each song. And if you're in a small club and there's an audience and a bunch of musicians, you know, you just got something going, and then sitting there and all the energy has been dissipated, they look to the mug behind the microphone to do something. So I started telling stories. And so partly there were characters coming out in these stories and emerging. And we had on one album a character with Paul Whitehead had created with a fox head and a red dress. So, and I sat around with Paul Conroy, who was working in our record company at the time. He was saying, well, why don't we get someone to walk around the gig in the fox head and the red dress? And I thought, oh, I might as well give that a go. So I went into my wife's wardrobe and pulled out a red dress, which was in fact an Ossie Clark dress. But at that point, I was thin enough to get into it, and we got this sort of fox head made up. And I remember the first gig that I wore it was in this former bullring in Dublin, which was not exactly the most sort of enlightened transgender environment. There was a shock. Literally, you could hear a pin drop when I walked out in this costume, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And the band, of course, didn't really know that I was going to do this. I'd mentioned something with Foxhead, but I didn't discuss it because I knew there would not be a majority vote going my way. And the same, you know, when I came up with a whole lot more costumes at the Rainbow,